Good evening and welcome to the program Your Health 360. My name is Jacqueline Adebi. Imagine for a moment that the person who you love the most, who you entrust your life with, someone who you would not hesitate to say, my life is in your hands, would be the very person who would hold you down for something painful, so painful that you might find yourself losing your life because of it. Indeed, there are many people who go through, or should I say many women, young women especially, who have to go through this every year. In the midst of everything, there's a lot that the coronavirus pandemic has impacted on negatively in our lives. There's been some good too, but I'm talking about negatively. There are many things that, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about sexual and gender-based violence. We're talking of so many things that have happened because people are cooped up or largely cooped up. Well, another thing that a lot of us have not talked about or shy away from talking about is the fact that in this 1 year since the virus brought the lockdown and all of that, there's been no cutting season. That's right, you heard me right, cutting season. And for people who do not know, you might think I'm talking about the cutting of grass or something, but no. If you didn't know, well, the holiday seasons, when children are able to leave the school or, leave whatever it is for some time, for a period of time, when they're able to be cut, and I'm talking about the clitoris of the girl child being removed, and sometimes the whole, but I'm just going to allow the experts to do that. But, during the holidays, a lot of parents, not because they hate their children, but because they love them, they say that they have to do this so that these children can be accepted into society. And Nigeria is one of the 28 countries that still do this worldwide. There are people for whom Christmas or even the long holidays mean, it's time to get my daughter cut so that she can have her age group, in quote, or her mates respect her, in quote. But you see, with the pandemic, when most of us have been cooped up, cutting has been taking place, with free abandon, if you will. Because, there's hardly anyone going to school. And while they're cutting, a lot of people are dying. Girls are dying. Girls are getting scarred for life. That's right. Girls are getting scarred for life. And that is why, tomorrow is actually the day, the official date when this is commemorated. But of course, on Your Health 360, we had to bring it to you today. And that is why I have with me in the studio two female doctors. Do you know what that means? To be able to get two doctors on a Friday evening like this to attend to this. And I think it is because they are also female doctors who have heard and seen, what this can do to the lives of people who get subjected to female genital mutilation. And that's why, with pleasure, I welcome Dr. Sandra and Dr. Selma. Dr. Selma is of the NISA Fertility Clinic, and Dr. Sandra is representing the Resident Doctors Association Kaduna chapter here in our own chapter here in Kaduna. It's a pleasure to have both of you ladies. You are welcome into the studio.
Thank you very much.
Female genital mutilation. It's something that, since when I grew up to understand myself to be a sexual being too, I've had stories being told that, for some people, they don't even have that at all because people who love them took that away from them because they loved them, because they didn't want stigma on their children, and it's still happening even up till today. Let me start with Dr. Selma for you to tell us how many types of cuts do we really have. Just describe it as vividly as you can so that we all can follow.
Okay, so let me start by a brief definition of female genital mutilation or female genital cutting. That refers to any procedure that removes part or the whole of the external female genitalia. That is, if you look between a woman's legs, any procedure that will take off anything there you can see is referred to as female genital mutilation. And this is when it is done for non-medical reasons, okay? Because there are medical reasons sometimes when you have to do some cutting. Of course, that will have health benefits. Now, the WHO has classified female genital mutilation. I'll call it FGM for short. It has classified FGM into 4 classes. So the first class, which is type 1, that is when the clitoris or part of the clitoris is removed. Okay? So that is also known as a clitoridectomy. Now, for type 2...
What is the clitoris?
The clitoris...
For people, we don't know what it is. What is a clitoris?
The clitoris is that part, when you look in between a woman's legs, that part that sort of sticks out, that looks like a hook, that points out, is definitely higher than the rest of it. It's the top, the highest point you see, closest to the navel or closest to the hairline. That is the clitoris, okay? It's the equivalent of the penis in the man, all right? So for type 1 FGM, that clitoris is removed entirely or partially, all right? Now with type 2 FGM, it now moves down to the labia. The labia are those folds that are beside, that sort of come out from the edge of the clitoris. So you have tiny folds, those are the labia minora, and then you have the larger ones, okay? Those are the labia majora. Now for type 2, it is the labia minora that is excised, all right, partially or completely. Now the most severe form, in my opinion, is the type 3. What happens in the type 3 is that the actual vaginal orifice, now what we refer to the vagina, that is you can see the opening to the vagina. That is where the menstrual blood comes from. That is where the sexual act is performed through, okay? So the aim of the type 3 is to narrow that opening. So what happens now is that those folds on the edge of the opening, so the labia minora and labia majora, they are excised, they are cut. And then they are cut off, they are now brought back together to heal together. So in doing that, they now cover up the opening of the vagina, and they can even cover up the opening of the urethra. The urethra is where the urine comes from. So when you see a woman that has had type 3, you may not see the opening where the urine comes from. In a very severe case, the clitoris may be completely gone. It's not always gone, but a lot of the times they take it off. And then the vagina itself sometimes is so blocked that even for the menstrual blood to come out is a problem. So that is type 3. That's the most severe form. And interestingly, it is in Africa that you find that type. Then type 4 refers to any other type of cutting, whether it is piercing with an earring or putting corrosive materials into the vagina to narrow it, or cutting by the side, or the gishiri cut, whatever else doesn't fall under those 3 categories, that is classified as type 4.
Okay, so let me come to Dr. Sandra Okoli here and ask about, that the type 3.
It's called infibulation, yeah.
How, the picture that you just painted, Dr. Selma, I'm wondering, how do you get such, she's going to get married, right? So how would sexual intercourse even take place if menstrual blood has a problem, even coming out? The small orifice that is left open, it makes it difficult for even menstrual blood to come through. How would such a woman or a girl child, if married off, have sexual relations with the husband?
Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you, viewers. Of course, we've had instances whereby when these girls are married off to their husbands, and they get to the point of having sexual relationship, it's always difficult.
So what you're
Especially,
saying, Doctor, I want us to make this as graphic as possible so that people understand what you're saying. So this means that he's going to tear through the orifice that was artificially made. Is this what we're saying? Or is she going to go back and get it reopened for easy access to the husband?
the type 3,
Yes.
from what she was saying,
Right.
there's going to be stitching of the two labia, minora and majora. They stitch them up. Naturally, they are not stitched up. But in female genital mutilation, the type 3 one, that's the infundibulation, they stitch the two up, thereby, narrowing the place. And then even the vaginal orifices itself is narrowed, such that when it comes to sex and the husband wants to penetrate, it's going to be difficult. And if he succeeds in penetrating, it's going to be very, very painful. You can imagine, girls or women, having dyspareunia, that's painful sexual intercourse, because they underwent this genital mutilation. So it's really a terrible experience for these girls and these women when it comes to having sexual intercourse as a result of that.
I don't know
so
if
it's a painful
terrible,
experience.
Dr. Okoli, I don't even
Yes.
know if terrible begins to describe what you just painted. I mean, the picture I'm getting, because we know that for most women, the first time, especially with the hymen and everything, having sex actually comes with discomfort. Okay, and then to hear now that there's going to be even more pain and more discomfort than that, and something that was caused just so that you can be accepted by a society. I'm going to come back to, both of you. I mean,
can I just say something about the type 3? I mean, I've been privileged to see it once. I don't know if I'll call that a privilege. And this was a Somalian young lady. Okay, this was when I was working in the UK. And working there is a little bit tricky. You don't ask patients questions as freely as you would ask, for instance, if she was in Nigeria. I remember she came in labor, and the topmost question on my mind was, how did she get pregnant in the first place? Because I kid you not, the vaginal orifice was almost not visible. Her husband was there hovering over her mom was there, and they were all very happy. She herself was happy. She didn't have any problems, because obviously every female in her family and in her circle had the same, all their external genitalia looked the same. Interestingly, for her to be able to give birth, we now had to de-infibulate, that is to cut it open, because there was no way that she was going to be able to give birth through that tiny opening. What is interesting is that a lot of them now request for it to be sewn back up after delivery. And that is such a problem that in the UK now, it is against the law for a doctor to sew it back up. So for that to have become a law, that there have been so many requests for it to be sewn back. So as regards how painful the intercourse will be, I guess, this is just a guess. They've accepted it as a way of life. For you to have had the freedom for it to be opened and then you request for it to be sewn back, then you know that it is something that is accepted as a way of life. If you don't know any better, if everybody else is screaming and shouting that intercourse is horrible, you don't expect yours to be different. So it may just be a simple case of that.
right.
Yeah.
Well, these are, I mean, for a lot of people would agree that these are victims, people who have been, like you said, have come to accept it, but it's very wrong. But let's come back home and let me ask both of you, in your practice, both Dr. Selma Pam and Dr. Sandra Okoli, who are here in the studio with us, what type have you seen? What types are really common in Nigeria, Dr. Selma?
I wouldn't say in Nigeria. My practice has been limited to Plateau State and Kaduna. So what I've seen type 1 and type 2. I've not seen any type 3 in my practice. Yeah.
So type 1.
That's the clitoris is off, and then also the labia, the labia minora, that's the first folds you see. I've seen them off. Those are the ones I've seen.
Okay,
Dr.
maybe-
Okoli.
All right, before I go to that, let me just say that all over the world, about 200 million women, girls stroke women, have at one point in their lives had or they underwent the female genital mutilation. 200 million. And you discover that most of them are in Africa. Asia,
Most of
Yes.
Africa, Asia, Middle East. While there are some, due to immigration, they found their way in, maybe North America,
Yeah.
Europe.
The Western world.
You understand?
Mhm.
Those places. You discover that when you go there, it's the immigrants that you see who practice this FGM.
Mm.
Okay? But here, this type 1, 2, and 3 is common among the northeastern Africans. We have Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia. When you go there, okay, no, I mean the type 4, which is the very serious one.
The type 4, the type 3.
Type 3. Yeah.
Type 4 too, the one that you don't remove any flesh.
Okay.
You don't remove
sew,
any flesh.
You sew up everything.
You don't pick out any flesh.
Okay.
Type 1, 2, and 3, you can pick out flesh.
Mhm.
But when you come to type 4, which is the most serious type, you don't pick out any flesh. There they can prick, the vagina, they can scrape, you understand? And they can do a lot of things. They can even cut the posterior wall of the vagina to put something in, or to do whatever they want to do there. Even herbal medications they can put in, which is most dangerous. And that's what's practiced in the northeastern part of Africa. Though the prevalence is not high, it's about 10%. But we have 90% of the type 1, 2, and 3. That one is the one that carry the whole bulk. And it's common in West Africa, where we belong. We have Guinea, we have Chad, we have Nigeria, and then we have Burkina Faso too. We have them. So the types 1, 2, and 3 are common in these West African countries.
But what types have you seen in Nigeria? Because we're bringing it back home now. In Nigeria, in your practice.
The most common type, that is being practiced is the type 1 and 2. That's very common in Nigeria. Yes.
Very common.
Type 1 and 2. That's very common. That's
Type 3 is
the clitoris. The clitoris, either you remove part of it or you remove all of it, or the labia minora, you remove part of it or you remove all of it.
Okay.
That's part 1, 2, and 3. And sometimes type 1 and 2. The type 3 is not the one you stitch up the 2 labia. It's not as common actually as the first.
Is almost exclusive to the Somalians and the Sudanese. You can almost swear if you say a Sudanese woman or a Somalian woman, she'll have type 3.
Type 3.
So it's interesting because when you see it, you're a bit confused as a woman. Everything is just smooth, and there's just a tiny vagina orifice. You may not you are unlikely to see the urethral, where the urine comes out from. So it's just smooth all the way, because it has healed together.
Oh well, they say you start your healing from home, and the fact that we have this cutting in Nigeria. So thank God thank God for small mercies. They say that we don't have the extreme type. I'm talking about 3 and 4. I would say in Nigeria. But I will tell you that I also have had the opportunity to meet a woman who, from her description, had type 1. Where the clitoris was removed. And I'll tell you that she lost her husband because of this. The man walked out of the house one day because he said he was tired of sleeping with a woman who, if at all she was going to, get up any sort of feelings in their marriage bed, it would take him eons of, doing a lot of work to get her some little form of feeling. And so that's a woman whose life has been impacted, and she keeps going in and out of hospital for different things. So I would like to ask Dr. Selma, why do we keep doing this, and how, as a doctor, from a doctor's perspective, do you think that we can get ourselves to stop this largely from happening anymore? Because this year, I'm glad to say that the theme is there is no time for global inaction. So we've been called to not just act, we've been asked to come together and fund and unite, against this. What are the stumbling blocks?
Let me just start by saying that, and this is largely my opinion based on research that, my personal research I've conducted. I think one of the problems is our problem as Africans realizing that a woman has needs and a woman has desires, okay? Let's start from the function of the clitoris, which seems to be the offending organ in this situation. The clitoris is basically there for pleasure, all right? And it seems that is the focus. Why should a woman have an organ that can cause only her pleasure? Because she is the only one that benefits from the clitoris being stimulated, okay? So if she's going to get pleasure, then we have to take it out. We don't want her having pleasure either on her own or with somebody else, all right? So the organ is taken off. It's taken off to keep her chaste. It's taken off to make sure that she remains a virgin until she's married, or her husband is reassured that she's a virgin until she's married, because she will not have any need to use it because it's not going to give her any pleasure. And from my let me just say unofficial research as a gynecologist, when you speak to women, very very few women know what an orgasm is or have even experienced one. So how do you now convince a generation of women who have never had an orgasm, do not see the use for it, and have perpetuated this act of preventing other women from having it? How do you change that mindset? I think that's the issue. People will tell you, you're not supposed to enjoy sex. It's for having children, it's not for enjoyment. So I think that is where we have to change the mindset, which is going to be quite difficult. Apart from coming to the medical aspects and the harmful aspects, the first thing is to realize that there's nothing wrong in a woman feeling pleasure with her husband. You understand? Mm-hmm. So if we get to that acceptance, then we now move to this practice itself. What does it do? Apart from hurting your self-esteem and causing a lot of mental and emotional trauma, it actually causes health problems. First of all, a great majority of the cutting is done in girls that are less than 5. It's done by traditional practitioners. In other countries, like in Egypt, they have proper doctors doing it, to make it more healthy, so to speak. But in our own climes, it is done by traditional practitioners. How sure are you that you get the one that knows how to do it properly? So sometimes in the process of cutting the clitoris, they can even cut the urethra. They can affect the way you pass urine. You can bleed. You can get infections. And then, as you had rightly said, it's done during a season. So they cut from this one and take the same implements and cut from this one. Cross-infection of blood-borne diseases, hepatitis, HIV, all those things can be spread. So that is immediate. Later on, what happens? There are some people that are prone to keloids, for instance. Such people will now have very ugly scars, which, like for example, this lady you talked about, it may be a problem. You can imagine if a couple had never been intimate before they got married, and on the wedding night he sees nasty scars there, anybody will be scared. Do you understand? And then you when you have this type 3 and the opening for passing urine is off, urine now will gather there. You can't pass urine properly. The urine now gathers in your bladder. It now makes it more easy for you to get bladder infections and to get bladder stones, which in the long run can even end up causing kidney damage. Do you understand?
So there's a host of other
So at the end of the day, in my own mind is, what can we do? Change the mindset, particularly of the women. There's nothing wrong in opening up a discussion, explaining things to yourself, explaining things to your daughter. Sex is normal, sex is natural, sex should not be endured, it should be enjoyed. And you can do this all in the context of a proper marriage. It's the way we go about it. Do you understand?
Let me come to Dr. Sandra Okoli and ask, what are our figures when it comes to things like teenage pregnancy? Because if one of our greatest fears is that if we leave our daughters with their clitorises, they're going to go haywire. They will become, sexually adventurous, and we don't want that. Then our figures should show. And so I'm asking, do we have a higher incidence of teenage pregnancy, for instance, in Nigeria than in other countries where these practices aren't done?
Before that, I just want to say that, this FGM, is mostly from 15 years and above. That's between 15 and 49 years. That's mostly the reproductive age group.
Mm-hmm.
But I have good news also. This age-long practice of over 1,000 years ago, in the past 3 decades, the prevalence has been dropping. It's not as high as before. So that's good news for us.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to say is that in so many parts of the world, today, that practice has been halted. Maybe by laws and so many other,
Let me quickly jump in here. Talking
Yes.
about laws, Doctor,
Yeah.
I don't know if laws can help, but to what extent? Just while I was talking about this issue before coming into the studio, someone told me that, well, because of laws, what some of them are doing now in the village is for newborn girls, they start to press on the clitoris. There's like a bathing ritual where you continue to press on the clitoris using hot water and your finger, the strongest of your digits, which is the thumb, and you press down on the clitoris and you continue to do that. It becomes a bathing ritual for the baby. And it just goes to show that yes, we might prevent cutting if we don't work on the mindset. We might work on people not cutting, but desensitizing the clitoris is still going to be a huge part of the baby bathing rituals in a place like Nigeria. And so once again I'm asking, yes,
I was coming to that. The reason why pregnancy is still on the increase, despite the fact that they cut these girls to they believe that it's going to stop them from being promiscuous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet you have teenage pregnancy every now and then. So I was trying to say, or I said, that the incidence or the prevalence is dropping now. Even the girls themselves and the women are saying we don't want it anymore. And because of that, mothers no longer give their babies or their girls to be cut. And then you discover that the incidence or the prevalence of the FGM is dropping
in Nigeria.
The age of 15 and below.
Do we have that as a fact, or you're just
from
postulating?
researches, health surveys
in Nigeria?
Yes, and
Definitely there's more awareness. It has
there's
dropped.
more awareness. So some girls are even refusing. Their mothers are also refusing to give out their daughters to be cut. So that has really helped. If you take 10 girls now and examine them, you discover that maybe just 2 were cut. Then the remaining 8, the clitoris is very sensitive, to stimulation and arousal. So if it's not tampered with, you discover that the stimulation and arousal will be there, and then they'll be having sex, enjoying it, okay, and maybe eventually end up being pregnant. So I think that's part of it.
Okay.
The reason why we still have
it, even though you didn't. I wanted to know what our the incidence of teenage pregnancy is. Dr. Selma, do you know what the incidence is?
I must confess, I don't have current figures now.
Okay, as compared to other places where the practice isn't had. If you're just joining us this evening, with me in the studio, 2 wonderful female doctors, and we're talking about female genital mutilation. The fact that we even have one person or one tribe that is still practicing it is, I think, one tribe too many in Nigeria. The prayer is that we get to that point where no tribe feels the need to do this. But it's a conversation, okay? And right after this commercial break, we'll be opening up the phone line so that you can talk to us. Let's talk. Why is this practice still something that you would, buy into? If you buy into it, why? It's not a time to judge. We're not being judgmental, just to try to understand each other. Why do we do this? That's what we'll be wanting to hear from you right after this break. Stay with us. It's Invicta 98.9.
Your Health 360.
Thank you for staying with us through that commercial break there. Still with Dr. Selma Pam of NISA Fertility Clinic and Dr. Sandra Okoli, who is ably representing our Resident Doctors Association Kaduna chapter. Thank you for your time. Like I said before we went on that break, at this point, I'd really like for people to talk to us. Let's have a conversation, because I think if there's anything we've been able to establish, it is that the change must come from us, because we keep looking for ways to circumvent the law. If the law says no cutting, we have people now who are pressing down on the clitoris and trying to just desensitize it the best way they can. Okay, so and the lines are now open. We're live on Facebook, and so you can actually drop your comments on Facebook, and I'll see them and read them out. And if you would rather, then you could call into the program, and the numbers are 081 40,000 989. Once again, that's 081 40,000 989. And we have 070 87 800 989. Once again, that second number is 070 87 800 989. So we're cutting, girls, and we need to talk about it. Why is the clitoris so intimidating? Why does it scare us so much on our female children? Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, please go ahead quickly. Unfortunately, that line got cut off. Let's keep trying. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the fact that I've heard this from a woman who cuts. Actually went to shop some time ago right here in Kaduna. And she said to us, if you don't cut the clitoris, the hood, the skin that covers the sensitive tip of the clitoris, she says, holds a lot of debris, dirty, if you would like. And if you don't clean it, this girl or that girl, apart from the fact that she wouldn't be accepted, is a person. Okay, we have another call here. Let's take this. Good evening. We're connected. Good evening. Can you hear us? Okay, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. And, well, let's just keep trying. And so she said that the hood actually traps a lot of dirty, like we love to say. And if you don't remove it, then that girl is going to be prone to a lot of genital infections. How true is this?
Yes, absolute fallacy. There's no truth in that whatsoever. It may be true in the man, but definitely not in the female. That is the least reason why a woman should be circumcised or a girl should be circumcised. On the contrary, some research, because research is a bit sketchy, has even shown that people that are circumcised are more likely to have infections like bacterial vaginosis. So what she's saying has no truth to it whatsoever. Yeah.
All right. Well, still seeing calls getting cut off. I hope that you're able to get through before we have to go this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm calling from Angon Sunday.
You're welcome. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Yes, the problem I'm having was 39 years. I noticed that my family have been cut my territory.
The clitoris.
Yes, because any relationship I'm into, if I able to open up tell the guy, I will not see him, and I don't feel anything. I don't have any affection for any man. I don't feel anything as a woman.
Well,
I
this
don't feel anything as a woman. I don't feel anything. I've just been a woman, but to me, inside me, I don't have any connection with a man. I don't feel anything.
okay.
So I don't know how to meet Dr. Salma. I don't know how to meet her.
Okay.
There's so many things I wanted to discuss. It's not on air.
Okay. All right. That's
Yeah.
fair enough. She will give out some way through which you can contact her after this program. So just keep listening.
Okay, ma.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
And thank you so much for, contributing to this conversation. Okay, so here is one person's life that's been impacted negatively. I mean, so the men keep leaving because she can't seem to muster up some sort of feeling in the relationship. Let's go take another call. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, ma.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Alam from Gonungwa here in Kaduna.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
What I want to find is this. When I was growing up, my parents, they said that if a woman is not caught, the period is not caught, that during childbirth, that it may affect the baby that is when coming out. I don't know how true it is. That is the reason why most people go for it.
Okay. Can you tell us where you're from, sir? Like
I'm an Igomba tribe from Nasarawa State.
Okay, so even in Nasarawa they remove it, right?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Or are you married?
Yes, I'm married.
Did you look for a woman who was circumcised? Did you look for that on purpose?
My wife was circumcised. She was circumcised.
Okay. All right. So do you have daughters?
You just have to do it.
Do you have daughters? Do you have daughters?
Yes, I have a daughter.
Are you planning on taking her for circumcision?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, so let's have this conversation with you and the doctors. He's asked you a question.
Yes, I've read about that.
Okay.
I don't know if you've read about it. Apparently, a baby is not supposed to touch the clitoris when they are being delivered. And that is why they do the circumcision. I mean, speaking medically, there's no basis for it. You understand? There's no basis for it. Some of these traditional practices may have had, maybe one incident happened and they now said whatever went wrong because the baby maybe somehow or the other was in contact with the mother's clitoris during the process of delivery. But I can tell you that medically there's no truth to it. It is just a practice that is enshrined in untruth and that has just gone on for generations,
That if the baby's head touches the clitoris.
That in the process of delivery, in the little research I was doing before this program, I came up upon it, and that was strange because I hadn't heard that before. So apparently, the circumcision has to be done because if the lady delivers and her baby touches her clitoris in the process of, the act of giving birth, that baby will have problems. I don't know what problems they anticipate, but he has now corroborated that story. So it is a practice, but it's not true.
It's not true, sir. I hope you're listening.
Yeah.
We have a lot of calls coming in. Let's take another one. Hello, good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
Emmanuel from
Go ahead, sir. Your line isn't...
I'm not yet married.
Yeah.
I just want to know. Is it that I want to know so that in case I get married, I'll know what to do for her because I will not to cut the clitoris at all. Or she just, I don't say it's legal.
Okay.
We can't really hear.
Yeah, we can't really hear you, but he's asking. He said he's not married yet, but he wants to know: do you cut the? Is it that we're saying no? People shouldn't touch the clitoris at all. Good evening. Hello.
I swear.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Hello. Are you there? Okay. All right, we have a lot of calls coming in. We cannot hear you, so we'll have to let that call go. But coming to
Yes, talking about
Dr.
that,
Okoli.
yes.
Yes.
You know, it's just one of the myths. You know, there are a lot of myths flying around on this female circumcision thing. And you discover that because of the mutilation of the female genitalia during childbirth, okay, it's difficult because the place is narrow. The outlet is narrow. So it becomes difficult such that you discover such women, they may have prolonged labor and so many other complications that will now make them to end up with cesarean section. Okay? Or if it's not cesarean section, maybe postpartum hemorrhage. So these are some of the problems that arise from such practices. So there is no need to tamper with the female genitalia at all. I mean, the way God has made it is such that any woman can deliver successfully. Because the problems that are associated with cutting the female genitalia are so enormous, and some of them are quite life-threatening. And you discover that the prevalence of this female circumcision and also the procedure that is chosen depends on ethnicity. Both ways. Both of them. It depends on what part of the country.
Let's go take another call. Good evening.
What part of the world is.
Good evening. We're connected. Good evening. Okay, I can't hear you, so we'll have to let that one go. Still looking out for your calls. We have another call. Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, you're welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Go ahead.
I want to ask, is it good to circumcise the child now?
No, it is not. That's why we're having this program.
Okay, because I want to know.
Were you circumcised?
I just gave birth last week.
A girl?
Yes.
Were you circumcised?
No.
So why would you want to circumcise your daughter?
So I just want to know because I'm listening to what is saying.
No. It's not good. That's why we're asking why people do it.
I think what you need to know, madam, is that it does not help your daughter at all if you circumcise her. Instead, it will make things difficult for her. In the process of circumcising her, she can bleed. Some people will bleed to death. In the process of circumcising her, you can even give her infections like hepatitis, like HIV. Okay? In the process of circumcising her, the place where she passes urine, you can damage it, and it will now be causing her different types of problems with her urine, with her bladder. It may even end up causing kidney problems. Okay? In the process of circumcising her, when she grows up eventually and wants to deliver, that place will now become blocked. And for her to even have her baby may become a problem. She may end up having cesarean section. And if they don't take her to hospital on time and realize that she needs a cesarean section, she may even end up losing her life. And then when she even marries her husband, even when her husband is meeting with her, she may not have any feelings. It may even affect the husband. He will say it's as if he's meeting with somebody that is a dead person. So that can even cause her to be divorced, and she will be marrying from man to man. So when you look at all these things, there's nothing to gain. You understand? There's nothing to gain from doing the circumcision. Okay?
Okay, let me add something. You know, like this female circumcision is causing problems in a lot of families. In a lot of families, it's causing a lot of problems, and that's why you discover that there are cases of divorce, you know, in marriages just because of this problem. Because the clitoris has been tampered with, it's been mutilated, it's been removed, cut or totally removed, and then the woman cannot feel anything. Let me I remember about over a year ago, a patient came and said the husband left her because her vagina was too wide. So she came so that we could help her narrow it. And for us to help her narrow it, we have to mutilate. It's a genital mutilation we have to do, though therapeutically. It's not a traditional or cultural one. We are now doing it as medical professionals. So she said her husband left her because he kept complaining your vagina is too wide, or you know. So,
But that's not because of circumcision before.
Okay, no, she didn't say it was circumcision, but sometimes it's possible. I don't know exactly what happened to her, but I'm just giving an example of what can happen in relationships and marriage when it comes to the female genitalia having issues.
Right.
And then another patient that I saw some months ago came to me and told me that she was worried that she wasn't feeling anything. Whenever she was with her husband, she was not aroused. No matter what her husband did to her.
We just heard from someone
yes,
right
and she
now.
was not aroused, and it was making her have some kind of mental issues, She was so sad and depressed about it and had to confide in me.
Indeed.
Yes.
That would lead to depression, indeed. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, you're welcome. Quickly.
My name is Sam. I'm from Masara.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say is that I see no reason for a female to be circumcised because the effect now is kind of not okay. I think most of the women now need orientation on it.
And even the men, we cannot do it without you. If a woman gives birth and the husband says, in my place, this is what we do, and we must do it. So we need.
Actually, yeah, it's true. It's true. Both parents need orientation on it, definitely. Because if they should know that female child they are thinking of circumcising, after the circumcision, there are effects, there are infections. Like the doctor said, HIV and other infections. Also, she might not enjoy sex when it's time for her to meet with her husband in the future, and it causes divorce and home breaking. Okay. So I think parents of nowadays need orientation on that.
Okay. Thank you so much for chipping in this evening to the conversation. And I'll have to come to the doctors because we have run out of time or about to run out of time. I'm going to ask for your last lines. And in those last lines, I'll be asking you to tell us what the consequences. I know you've touched on this, but, enumerate them for us once again. The consequences of desensitizing or cutting your child in any way, because even if you don't cut and you're one of those people who have taken to pressing down on the clitoris and pouring hot water on it just in the hopes of desensitizing it enough so that child, in quote, will not be a wayward child, then I think we need to know what are the consequences of female genital mutilation on our population in the long run. And let me start with Dr. Okoli.
Yes, the SDG, that's Sustainable Development Goals. The Goal 5 talked about ending this female genital mutilation by the year 2030. So the onus is on every country to do all they can to make sure that the prevalence goes down and the practice is stopped. So in Nigeria, you discover that all over the country, it is being practiced. The only thing is that the prevalence is higher in the southern part of the country than the northern part of the country. Okay, but some states in the country are now stopping it by coming up with some legislation that will ban or end it in the communities. And those states are succeeding. If you go there, you discover that the prevalence, they are coming down. So everybody's hand has to be on deck. Even the healthcare professionals. The problem now is some of them are doing it. This female genital mutilation, some healthcare professionals are doing it now for girls and women, and that's one of the problems we're having. So I just want to use this opportunity to talk to our healthcare professionals to look at the consequences or the issues that will arise from it. If globally we're trying to stop it, how can we now increase the prevalence again by doing it in the theater as healthcare professionals? You know, so and these people that practice it using the crude means and maybe unsterilized sharp instruments, you know, they can be trained and be given sterile materials to use.
We don't want them trained, doctor. We want them to stop.
No, I'm talking of, you know, I'm saying if it's where it's not possible to stop it completely. Where it's not possible to stop it completely.
We're hoping and praying that it will stop.
Yes, we're hoping and praying. That's my prayer.
And that's the work that we're trying to do here.
Yes, so the sensitization is very important. The woman has to hear it. The girl child has to hear it. The man has to hear it.
All right.
As once you say no to female genital mutilation, definitely the prevalence will keep going down until we end it by the year 2030.
And amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Dr. Selma.
I think, first of all, coming here and having this discussion, having the International Day set up by the UN is the first step. So we're talking about it. I'm happy that listeners had called in, and we even had a man who stood up against it. So that's the first step. I think, I've spoken about the complications. I won't go into that again. But I think what we need to work on is, number one, open up the conversation, which is what we're doing here. Okay? Use the media to sensitize. So we have to put out messages on the radio, on the television, in our movies, because a lot of us watch these Nollywood movies. We need to talk about it in the different cultural aspects. Okay? We need to look at the people who do it. So these traditional practitioners, for a lot of them, that's the only job. Can we look at retraining them to do other jobs in a healthcare setting that will also fetch them an income? Okay? Then we need to talk to our men. A lot of men have this notion that it is done to make sure that the woman is a virgin, is done to make sure that he will enjoy sex, is to protect the woman's chastity. But do you realize that in doing this female genital mutilation, you are causing her more physical and mental pain than you are causing her relief? And when we talk about this maintaining a woman's virginity, it's only a man that can disvirgin a woman. So it is the man that can prevent a woman being disvirgined in the first place. So we need to get the message out to our men. We need to talk to our religious leaders in the churches and in the mosques, because research has shown that some of these things are perpetrated from religious perspectives. So we need to have our religious leaders understand that this thing has no basis, and they have to now send out correct messages. We need to talk to our women groups. We need to normalize the discussion of sex among women and young girls. Let them know that sex is good. It's meant to be enjoyed in a healthy context. Because a lot of women do not even know about sex. A lot of these teenage girls that get pregnant is because some of them don't even know that what they're doing can cause pregnancy. Nobody has told them. They don't know about contraception. They don't know about safe sex. So we need to have that discussion. Not having the discussion is not helping them. Then our government also needs to be involved, because to get all these things done, you need funding. So the money has to be there. Apart from the money, what else? There's something I wanted to say that has just slipped off. So there's quite a bit that can be done. I believe that 2030 is realizable. We can actually stop it, but we have to be committed. A lot of the push is coming from the Western world, sadly, because of immigrants that have gone there. They are the ones that let them know that this is a problem. Now, legislation, I gave the example of the UK. The legislation there is very strong. If you come in and you have a health practitioner sees you and you have been mutilated and you have a daughter, it's reported. So that daughter is followed up to make sure she isn't mutilated. So our own laws have been passed. 2015, the law was passed, it was banned. But how do we enforce those laws? Those are things we need to look into locally.
Indeed, because Dr. Okoli just said some health professionals have now taken to doing it, and somehow justifying it that they are doing it surgically, like in a clean manner now, when we're saying don't even do it at
that
all.
Doesn't make it right. It will make it safer, but it doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right. I'd like to thank Dr. Sandra Okoli for coming in today, and Dr. Selma Pam, thank you so much for coming in today. For the lady who wanted some way in which she could reach you, is there some way that you could you could give her something to reach you by. But in the meantime, I'm just going to leave you with this. Female genital mutilation is a cut that keeps cutting, and what I mean by that is the effects of it never stop. It just keeps rippling down the lifespan of that person. That is if the person doesn't die. Dr. Selma, you have that number now?
Okay, so I'll give you a WhatsApp number. That's 0908 749 8178. I'll repeat it. 0908 749 8178.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selma. Let's think about this. Let's get talking. Ask doctors. If you need to get across to any one of these doctors today, I'll be only too glad to point you in their direction. Ask, and you will get those answers. Thank you to the man who called from Nasarawa to clarify that. If you're not satisfied, please still call in. I'll be glad to answer your questions. And so I'm out of time. Thank you so much for listening. Until next week, Friday, when we come your way again with your Health 360. Don't cut. Just don't.